Welcome to Three Tiny Questions. Three Tiny Questions with Keni Thacker, founder and CCO of 100 Roses from Concrete.
Welcome to Three Tiny Questions, where three tiny partners ask the leading minds in marketing, like this guy, one question each about brands, trends, culture, and whatever else comes to mind. So the rest of us in advertising and marketing can just get a tiny bit better at it. I'm Mike Rovner, partner at Tiny, an ad agency devoted to doing great work with great people and having great fun doing it. And with me, as always, are my partners, Tom Chrisman and Michael Stupak. Say hi, guys.
What's up? Hello. How you doing? Hey, on today's episode of Three Tiny Questions, we are honored to have one of the most important voices, the consummate insider-outsider, one of our favorite people in the advertising industry, Keni Thacker. He's the Chief Diversity Creative of Keni Thacker, LLC, and the founder and Chief Creative Officer of 100 Roses from Concrete. His life's work is dedicated to creating opportunities for people of color in advertising and helping companies develop better strategies and practices to advance diversity, equity, culture, and inclusion. His work could not be more important, so pay attention. We honestly couldn't be more proud to have Keni join us today on Three Tiny Questions. Welcome, Keni.
So, Keni, how we like to start is we like to ask, we don't ask the questions yet. We give you a chance to tell us a little bit more about your career and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah. So my career is, I don't even know how to describe it, but, along the way, I definitely had the privilege or pleasure of making some really good friends along that way. And I'm talking about, of course, you, Tom, and Stoop. You all definitely saw me in the younger years.
JWT.
Yeah, the place that doesn't exist anymore. Ain't that a bitch?
Nope.
Whatever. Actually, before I was at JWT, I was actually freelancing at a lot of people. Well, Tom, you know this because we did a podcast probably.
The A-List. Look it up. It's a great episode.
Yeah, I believe you did yours right after mine, and you got way more listeners than I did. So fuck you, man.
Yeah,
he's very sensitive, Kenny.
So like 2 people listen to yours and 5 people listen to mine.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But I actually started at Ogilvy as a freelancer there, and then I don't even know how JWT found me. Maybe I applied, maybe I didn't. I really don't remember. I just remember getting the call and then me going over there for an interview. Or before I went, I asked an admin at Ogilvy. I was like, hey, like a place called JWT called me and they want me to come in, and what is it? And she was just like, oh yeah, it's like here, but older. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So, and because Ogilvy was never, no shade to Ogilvy, they were never going to pull the trigger and make me full-time. So I was like, all right, cool. Let me go to JWT. Had a really great conversation with probably my best boss ever there. Shout out to Pat Henry, because all the rest of my other bosses there were kind of garbage. But needless to say, I was able to make some really great friends. Shit, even met my wife. And like that's pretty much the story. But as far as what I do, I would say that spending time, and this is not me blowing, hot air or smoke up Tom or Stoop's butt, but being in the unique situation to being around new business and account teams and creative teams in the office and on the road. And that's a privilege that a lot of people didn't really have, and being around, especially the C-suite a lot, just gave me a lot of time to really learn the business. And I've never been to ad school. Well, yes, I have. Shout out to the ad house. But other than the ad house, like the experience that I got actually being in the room, honestly, like I think I have a PhD in advertising because I was able to just soak up so much, I'll call it game, in the room. And that was back, when our leadership was super, super strong. And I would say feared at the time. Like it was like, like the golden years before the slow sinking of the ship per se. So like, I think I told Tom this. I don't know, Stoop, if you know this, but the day, shout out to Rose and Ty, but the day Rose and Ty resigned was the day my daughter was born.
Wow.
so every birthday of hers, I'm reminded that, oh, 13 years ago, that's
Wow. It was
yeah, it
that
was like
long ago
literally
now.
like the day after. So I think that was March 23rd. She was born on March 22nd, but I was holding her and I got a call from the office and I'm like, you guys know I just had a baby. What the fuck are you calling me? And
Yeah.
then they're like, please just pick up the phone. And I was like, what's up? Rose and Ty just resigned. I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me.
So
So
does your
Ty,
daughter
Ty
ask you,
Montague and Rosemary Ryan were running JWT back then, and they were such a great team. I had worked with Rose at Kirschenbaum and Bond back in the 1900s, and Ty I had always wanted to work for, and that was the first time I was working for him, and they were just such a great leadership team, and then when they left, it just sort of just faded away, and I ended up going freelance, and Kenny you left and did your thing. But what are you doing now?
Yeah.
What's your new thing, and
Yeah.
how
So
can people
so
get
a new
involved?
thing over the last 4 years or so, 4 years and counting, I've had the pleasure of applying all that great knowledge that I learned by sitting in those rooms and being on flights going everywhere from California, hanging out at Shutters with Stu to to Cannes to Barcelona. I've been to some pretty interesting places, but also sat at some pretty awkward tables being the only black dude there. So needless to say, I was able to kind of parlay all the things that I learned into actually things that I was doing on site at the New York office, which was promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion. But I was not to say that I invented it. I far from invented it, but I was also doing it when it wasn't the biggest topic of conversation within the industry. So Michael and Tom know, like I was doing this back in like 2011. So,
Mhm.
way before, the national American reckoning of everything that happened with the George Floyd tragedy. Like I was kind of talking about this stuff back in 2011. So being able to do that work at JWT from 2011 to I would say 2019 when I resigned, but still traveling the country with all these great people, I was like, okay, this is great work. I really love what I'm doing here. But sad to say, that former place just wasn't invested in me and really making it like, you know what, you're really good. This should be your day job. So, I resigned. And from then on, I spent a little bit of time in PR. COVID hit, so me and PR kind of parted ways. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start my own thing. And that's exactly what I did. I started my own consultancy, Keni Thacker LLC. And months before COVID, I started my own nonprofit called 100 Roses from Concrete, which is an organization that engages and services talent of color. I mean, we even service a couple white folks here and there. So pretty much anybody at the end of the day that needs that type of support in this business. And one thing, hopefully, that we can all agree upon is that when you come into this business, the one thing that these agencies do not do, regardless if you're black, white, male, female, however you identify, is support you. It's kind of like baptism by fire. Because
Mhm.
I remember my first days at JWT, I felt like I was being baptized in the fire. I thought I was going to get fired the first 2 weeks because, like, it was just like, well, there you go. And these are all the people. And this is back when the office was huge, right? And it's,
Huge.
well, this is where all the people, these are all the people you got to support. And I was like, oh, what? So, needless to say, by creating 100 Roses from Concrete, we've been able to support talent of color in this industry, young and older. That's been a beautiful thing. But also, at the heart of what I love to do is create ads. So we've actually also create commercials for nonprofit organizations all around the country. So, I use my little ad house time and really, add that into what we do for nonprofit organizations. And I'm proud to say that, in 4 years, we've made 12 commercials that have all been televised, raised over $5 million in free media for nonprofit organizations. So it's like, okay, JWT didn't want to recognize me now, but now I can really kiss my ass because I'm doing it independently, but I'm also doing it with the support of people that always knew that I could do this and continue to support me to this day. So that's like kind of like the edited remix version of what I do,
That's pretty impressive.
including the kiss my ass part.
Oh yes,
I love that part.
It's time for question one.
So you were talking about diversity, which makes sense, but the conversation has been changing, right? How do you think the conversation of diversity has changed recently compared to, even 60 years ago? How has it changed?
Yeah.
Obviously,
Yeah.
it's changed a lot faster more recently.
Yeah.
You just
Yeah.
touch on that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm glad you even mentioned that it did start 60 years ago. And this is just, maybe you could bring up a graphic here, but 60 years ago, the conversation actually started with the late great Bill Sharp, who is considered like the godfather of diversity in advertising, who used to work at JWT, believe it or not. So doing this work, I always feel like I'm standing on his shoulders. He was actually the first African-American group copy supervisor. So that's just a little bit of history. But now let's fast forward 60 years later, since Bill, kind of brought this on the scene. The conversation has turned a lot more negative. And unfortunately, and this is, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on this part of it, but, politics has made it a negative thing, because I would say, and after the George Floyd tragedy, everyone was like kind of running to the races, trying to fix the problem, thinking that it was an overnight fix, which it is not. It never has been and never will be an overnight fix. This is literally a marathon, and it's going to continue being a marathon. But also the problem was all these people in higher up kind of roles were kind of just saying that they wanted to fix it immediately so they can kind of look good in Adweek and all the other places and things of that nature. And literally, we're pledging millions and millions of dollars, but we really need to see what is the trajectory of those millions and millions of dollars. Because when we're thinking about it, we just said this started 60 years ago. So a couple $1,000,000 is not going to change it overnight. And if we're going to do it, we need to have the right people in place on all levels, not just, the people that kind of write the checks at the top, but all the way down to the bottom. We need to have people that are truly committed into how do we really change the narrative behind it. And then when you think about the negative attacks that it's getting, and it's getting negative attacks from all types of people. It's not just, quote unquote, white people saying like, oh my God, there's discrimination. Da, da, da. No, there's people of color that are truly hating DNI. And that's because they feel like they were kind of sold a bag of magic beans back in 2020, 2021, and nothing changed. I've seen posts here and there like, yeah, all DNI, whether it's chief diversity officers or consultants, everybody just needs to be fired and everything like that. And it's like, no, to me, it sounds like everybody's just giving up. So everybody kind of packed up their ball and they're going home because no one wants to play with them anymore. Or having the DNI ball just isn't cool anymore, or pretty much trying to actually win the game, they learned that is actually harder than just playing the game. So that's where I feel like a lot of the turbulence has come about. I'd probably say since 2022, because the data shows since 2022, there's kind of been like this slow decline in commitment from organizations and the bodies that have kind of been around for years and years and years have been like, well, okay, we can still get these organizations commitment, but we don't have to hold them accountable. So it's like, yeah, we'll take all the money and all that stuff, and we'll take the donations, but like, yeah, we're not going to really force you to really increase the number of Black leaders, women leaders, Asian leaders, straight gay leaders, whatever the case may be, whatever those KPIs were, let's just act like that never really happened. So that's where I've had a lot of conflict myself in just seeing how all these things happen. But also I remember articles that I was interviewed in with people like, oh, Keni, so how do you think this is going? I was like, ask me in 5 years. And here we are, not even 5 years later, like 2 years later. And things have already changed. So I remember, I think maybe it was 2021, I wrote something for The Drum. And the article was called, Dear Advertising, You're Late. And I always compared advertising to that person that comes to the party and brings shitty snacks, but wants their favorite song played. And it's just like, nah, man, like you can't have your favorite song played. And you brought like, expired Takis. Like no one really cares about you. But that's how the advertising industry really jumped on the DEI kind of, wave, because they're like, oh yeah, and we're just going to make ourselves so special, even though people have been talking about this for 60 years. So like the whole dynamic of it being something important after the unfortunate tragedy in Minneapolis, I just wasn't buying it. Was I happy that, okay, organizations are really trying to be better about it? But it was also just like, yeah, but waves in the ocean, they come and go.
Yeah.
And unless there's like some like tsunami, hurricane type of tide, what is it going to take for this to happen again? What is it going to take for a 2020, 2021 type of industry commitment for it to, and honestly, I don't want to know what that commitment would look like, right? Because what would the tragedy be in order for them to be all in again? Like, what would it be? And like, that's really, really scary.
So I've noticed, and this is nothing compared to seismic shifts in history like George Floyd, right? But the mighty dollar will eventually speak, right? And I've noticed in real time, clients, good for them, don't like seeing lack of diversity on a Zoom call. You know what I mean? And you get to a point where there's only so many boxes you can fill on a call, and agencies better wake the fuck up, everybody. Right. And it's going to hit them in their pocketbooks and their wallets. And when it does that, then you're going to see change. And it's unfortunate that's what it takes. But it's also, that's the positive side of it. Right. As opposed to like, how many people need to be murdered, for us to wake up and say like, there's something really askew here.
Really benefits the product, honestly. Diverse set of people in terms of backgrounds, not just in terms of their personal backgrounds, but their skill sets, where they've come from, right?
Culture, their culture, their everybody has a different, set of cultures and and if you don't have all of those in your organization, you're going to lose out. You're going to miss something.
We learned from Mad Men, right, that it was, or just history, that it was Italian art directors and Jewish copywriters for the longest time. It was like, well, you could almost, they justified it. They're like, the Jews are funny and the Italians are artists. It makes sense.
And it was the same in comics, right? Like when you think about DC and Marvel, like back in, those days in the 50s and the 60s and 40s even, it was the exact same model. I remember being at an event, I don't know, 2000 and maybe 16 or something like that. And the CMO of J&J was on stage, and he said, look, agencies, you got to get better at this diversity thing. And I went back to the agency where I was. I remember telling our CEO, hey man, like I was at this event and the J&J CMO's like, we gotta get better at this. And I was kind of brushed off. Love that guy to death, but like I was kind of brushed off, like, oh, okay, Kenny. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And now that agency don't even exist anymore.
Yeah. And it's like, well, he's got to say that, he's a CMO and that's his thing. And that's his, like, it's almost a cynical, like, he doesn't really mean it, or like, what are we going to do about it? And that's, I could go to my question. Can I do my question too, Mike?
Yeah. Let's
cool?
have a nice clean break now.
It's time for question 2.
What are your biggest frustrations that are happening now in 2024 at agencies? And how can they turn it around? What could they do to start changing those frustrations into happiness?
Yeah. So as you guys know, like, I just build stuff, right? Like that's just the kind of person I am. I just build things. So I think we need to get back to building things from the ground up. Well, here I go, giving some cheat codes away, but I feel that the best way to attack, and I'm going to call it a problem or a dilemma, is that we need to treat it like a new business client. Just break it all the way down. The demographics, what's missing, how can we make this appealing? Because it hits so many interesting points, where as it makes the internal team feel better when there's more diversity on teams. It brings more money to clients. It brings more money to the agency. And at the end of the day, it's also a great way to bring people in, right? But and also keep people that we do have, right? I mean, Tom and Stoop know every trip we went on, I was probably the only Black person there. Like, let's just be honest, right? Maybe Cash was around, but Cash, but like, I was, it was like maybe two of us, right? But other than that, like, never any women of color. So, like, I feel that agencies just kind of need to get with the program. And I know that's like such a played out cliche, but it's just like, you know what? It's slowly trickling down and to what Mike said, like the clients are demanding it, but I feel like the clients just need to get harder at it. Be like, you know what, if I don't see a change in the next 6 months, deuces. Like it just needs to be harder. But obviously, money, when there's millions of dollars online, it's like, well, am I going to give them longer than 6 months? Probably, because they do a pretty good job. But I feel like the clients need to just like demand it more, because it's just like I've worked with a lot of agencies, and when and especially meeting them in person, I will say, like, they'll tell me like, oh, well, Kenny, we advocate so much for talent of color on screen. I'm like, yeah, but your staff is like 98% white. I'm like, so thank you for putting them on screen, but it also goes to show to non-white talent that it's easier to get on screen than it is to get behind the scenes. And that's something that I went on this like rant about when I came back from Cannes. I've only been to Cannes once, and I don't think I want to go back. But like, I remember I went on this rant about it because my Cannes experience was like, I felt alone a lot of the time when I was out there, because everyone that they sent from the office was pretty much didn't look like me. Maybe one person, but like, other than that, like, I remember many times during that, whatever, 5 days, eating by myself at the end of the strip of that amazingly delicious pizza place down at the bottom.
Yeah, that's right.
But I remember just spending a lot of time alone. And if I wasn't, on our meeting yacht, like, I was eating by myself. And when I came back, that was when I really had this idea to kind of really light the match under JWT's ass at that time. Like, look, man, like, we got to do something better, because this sucks. At the end of the day. And that was like, summer 2016. And now here we are, in 2024. And that prioritization of diversity has come after all of us have been long gone. But now it's also gone.
Yeah. When it didn't work right away, or it was hard, they said, well, it doesn't work. Everybody's getting mad at us now, and we don't know what we're doing wrong. What I love what you're doing, and what we try to do at Ad House, and we're inspired by you, is to get to young people when they're in high school, not when they're already in the business or already trying to get in, but to get to young people. Like, you do the program at well, it's a college, but is it a high school? Is it a college? Is it the BIC program?
Well,
you also do a high school.
JWT, we did work with high schoolers. So yeah. So the Young Commodores program was the first college high school mashup of students of all backgrounds, but basically giving them this immersive experience in advertising. So that was with the Manhattan Early College of Advertising.
Right, Manhattan Early, Mecca. I love that. I love that place. We have to go there and give a speech and talk to the kids, and because I think that is the hardest part.
That school turns 10 years old this year. It turns 10 years old this year.
I have to say that, even though we teach at Ad House, so we're big proponents of it, and we all are products of ad schools in one way or another to get a portfolio going, but it's sorely lacking even at the collegiate level. Honestly, it's still they come out of college ill prepared. You still need to take a portfolio class. Unless you go to one.
And so you have to have the kind of money where you could be like, well, now I've done my 4 years of school, and now I'm going to do another year of school while I work or while I do. And it's like, that is just a high bar to hit.
And it's also the old way. If we think about it, everybody's a creator now. So these kids, as long as they're in college, encouraged, as long as they're encouraged, they could have a book ready. They don't even need to go to college because we don't care if you went to college. I just want to see your work.
On the educational front, the standards are so draconian, right? When you think about agencies and how they're looking for young people, and sad to say, I think like they need to flex with the ad house a little bit more. But like if you didn't go to Denver ad school, Miami ad school, well, Creative Circus now blended with Brand Center, like
Right.
that's considered the holy grail. And to me, that's absolute bullshit because all those places are expensive as hell. So if your mom and dad can't afford another 50 grand, 30 to 50 grand post your undergrad, which is like 150 to 200 grand, like, then how are you going to afford portfolio school? You're
Holy
not.
shit. You just
You're
gave
not.
me a great idea for a shirt, right?
Yeah.
Which is mom and dad couldn't afford SCAD.
Yeah, you know.
Let's get to question number 3 from Michael Stupak.
It's time for question 3. Whee!
Coming off of you talking about the growth initiative and the opportunities that it's provided for the people who've taken part and the clients that have been part of the initiative, I wanted to ask, because you're really making real work with these young kids and people from different backgrounds, bringing that talent together for clients, for organizations, and making a real difference in these people's career trajectories, right, and their experiences. Can you talk about some of the brighter spots and where you feel you've actually seen progress from your efforts?
Yeah. So the number one thing I think that we do really best is that they're so ready that 90% of them find jobs within the first 6 months after graduation. And that's something I'm gonna continue to brag about. And some people are like, oh, you're bragging too much. I was like, I don't care. Like it's in, especially as hard as I know we were talking about recruiters earlier, God bless them, whatever, however we feel about them. But like in such a very complicated industry and dealing with the gatekeepers, as we talked about, like having them find something within the first 6 months is just incredible. But I know it's because of their experience in the program and then giving it their all. Like, it's a free program to them. It's like it's not like they get paid because they only do about 6 hours a week. So, it's not enough to like pay them. But needless to say, for the fellows that invest into the program mentally, they get the money back so much quicker after they're done. After they're done, like the money is kind of just rolling in. So that's like the positive thing I would say. But also just due to the fact that we curate a community of so much care with the mentors and the moderators, like that's what these young people need. They just don't need to say, well, here's your laptop and here's a desk, have a great summer. That's where I feel like a lot of agencies kind of like mess up, but also not check in with them, like, how are you enjoying the experience? What more could we do, and things of that nature, rather than just, oh yeah, I'll write you a LinkedIn recommendation at the end of the summer and that's going to get you somewhere. It's probably not going to get them anywhere.
The other irony of all of this, and this is a shout out to old folks like all of us here, is that agencies are more and more complaining and cutting the cost of senior talent, when in reality, if you recruit the best senior talent, those of us who I include all of us here in this, that really, really still love this industry, supremely passionate about it, and love helping the kids out, because it's like having children. You relive your life as a creative, helping these juniors, seeing them on their first shoots, telling them how to cross off shots on the storyboard, all that fun shit. And it's so invaluable for everything we just talked about today, because without both sides of that, like, who's going to train them? Who's going to give a shit? Because agencies throw everybody into the fire, everybody, including the GCDs and ECDs, because you don't get trained how to do that either. You get promoted way too late. It's after you've already done the job for years by figuring it out of necessity. So at least reward those, not even reward them. It's necessary for you to actually keep the GCDs and ECDs around, and pay them. And there's only a few left anyway. And let them actually be your training program and your scouts, your talent scouts and your trainers. And you know what? Every now and then they're going to come up with some award-winning work for you too.
Yeah. But that's why I always felt like a lot of these agencies kind of mess up. Like they suck at promoting, they suck at developing, and they suck at, paying. as well, right? So a lot of the things that I learned, as I've, kind of repeatedly talked about during this podcast, is that I kind of learned by just watching or learned on my own. You know what I mean? Like, I learned to direct on my own. I learned how to produce on my own, the copywriting part, thank you, Ad House. But other than that, everything else, I was kind of just like self-taught at everything. Even doing DEI work per se, it was a baptism by fire because an opportunity presented itself. No one was doing it at JWT at the time. And I was like, I'm just going to do it because I kind of care about people that don't look like me. And, I know that, my job came with certain luxuries and privileges, but it was like, you know what? How can I give people, even if it was 5% of that, in some of the things that I created? So I was writing and producing documentaries. I was creating, remember the art battles? Like the art battles were lit as fuck,
That was fun.
Like, name me an agency that's done an art battle since.
Kenny, bonus question.
Here he goes.
Yet again.
Who's the best intern you ever had work for you?
Well, there's this young lady. I've only had one intern. So the bar is extremely high.
Tell us more. Who's this person?
The bar is extremely high. So I will say, a year or so back, I did have this intern by the name of Liv Stupak that we spent several months together. And she is absolutely amazing. And I know she's killing it at school right now. So big shout out to Liv for being a part of, the Rose Garden, as I call it, and just, continuing to make me proud that she's been a part of this journey.
Nice.
Where can people go to become a part of the Rose Garden, whether they want to be mentors? And this goes for everybody, every color, every age.
Yeah.
How can they be part of the Rose Garden?
Yeah. HunterRoseFromConcrete.com. I know it's long. I know
We'll put the graphic up. Don't worry.
HunterRoseFromConcrete.com. We're everywhere. We're on X, I guess, Twitter. We're on Instagram. We're on LinkedIn. We're not on Facebook because I just can't get with Facebook. We're all on the popular place. We're not on TikTok just yet.
Oh my God, this has been so fun. I'm going to wrap it up. Let's do it. This, what you're watching right now, has been 3 Tiny Questions with the absolutely fabulous Keni Thacker. A tremendous tiny clap for him. And we are your hosts, the tiny team of Tom Chrisman, Mike Rovner, and Michael Stupak. And you can check out our agency at tinyagency.com and see us provoking big ideas and belly laughs all over your LinkedIn feeds and going out to dinner with big bald people. You'll know what I mean. If you know, you know.
Challenge.
Tune in next time for more 3 Tiny Questions and send us your biggest marketing questions here in our feed. And you can find yourself featured here. And if you want to be on the show, let us know. And stay tiny, everyone.